If you're new to engineering, engineering drawings can seem a little daunting. There's a lot of information on there, and it's hard to digest unless you break it down bit by bit. So today, let's go over all the pieces of a drawing, why they're important, and what you should look for in each one of these components. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so over here I have a Revit standard drawing. So doing this inside of Revit just so that you understand like each piece, its own component. If I did this on PDF, it might be a little bit harder to break it down. So let's just take this whole drawing piece by piece and go over all of the components. So first up, you'll have the title block. So the title block is the thing that goes around all your information. And you can see that this is its own entity right here. Like you can move this around and that's called your title block. So in your title block, there are several components. Usually in like the top right corner or somewhere prominent, there's usually your company logo. So here, this is Autodesk, but this is like this is the firm you're working for and the firm that generated these drawings. So they are prominently displayed in some good location. And then usually beneath that, you have your consultants. So like for us, we are an MEP firm with architect built in. So, that's us. And then down here, we would have civil or structural, or sometimes if we have like a design architect for like the pretty side of things, we'll put them down here. So it's like kind of like, these are our partners and here's their information. If we move on down here, we have the revision block. So the revision block tells you when the drawing was last updated. And in this case, it just shows 60%. But like imagine you went 60, 90, and then you had your construction drawings. And then after constructions, there are several bulletins or addendums. And you want to make sure that you always use the latest drawings with the latest bulletin or addendum. That way you're not looking at something that has already been changed or is out of date. If you want to find the change on the drawings, you can go ahead and move over to the drawing, and there's usually a bunch of clouds, or some people call them clouds or bubbles or back circling. And essentially, these are used to highlight the changes from the previous issue. So like, let's say before, this fixture was up here for some reason. When you move it, you want to make sure that you cloud all these changes. And then with the cloud, there's usually a tag associated with it. So you can see down here that this triangle has the letter A in it. So that means that this cloud is cloud A, and it's correlated to this revision block right here, letter A. You can go down. For us, we usually go letters until construction, and then once you hit construction, it's revision 0, and then anything else after that is numerical. So depending on your company, you can organize it whichever way you need to. Okay, so moving on down, after the revision block, here we have the owner information, the drawing name, project number, who drew this, who designed this, and the drawing number. So this is all stuff that you have to make sure it's accurate, of course. Sometimes there's addresses on here. There's changes in the personnel working on this. So this just is by drawing to make sure it's always updated. And then the drawing number, of course, is very important because if you reference anything from another drawing, this is the number that people are going to be looking for. Down way here at the bottom, this says scale. Usually it'll say none if you're doing like a schedule or a diagram. Sometimes details are not to scale either, so this will say none. But if you're doing a floor plan, this will usually have the floor, the scale on here, or sometimes it'll just say as indicated or as noted. So then if you wanted to know the actual scale, come over here under your view, and you can see that there's usually a scale listed, either 1/8 or quarter, or if it's a site plan, it would be like 1:20 or something. This is something that you can use to measure the drawing with, and it's very important to put on the drawing so that you can get distances, dimensions, and everything off of it. So along with the scale under the drawing, I always like to put a graphical scale. So right here you can see that this is a graphical scale. Now the real reason that I like to have a graphical scale is that you sometimes may not print the drawing to scale. Like you can design it to scale, design it in like a 30x42 drawing title block, but then when you print it, you could print it in half size. So like if you don't realize that it was printed shrunken down to 50%, you wouldn't know that your drawings are all off. I mean, if you try to scale it an 1/8 inch, all your numbers are going to be completely off. So that's why I always like to put the graphical scale. So like how you use this is that you have 2 points on here. So if you take a measurement from here to here to here, should equal 1 inch. So 1/8 inch equals 1 foot. So if you have 1 inch, that should equal 8 feet. So that's the distance that I'm always looking for. Like when you measure in real life or on paper, this distance should always be 1 inch. And if it comes out less than an inch, that means that your drawing has been printed at 50% scale or some other shrunken number. So like if this measured out 1/2 inch, then I knew that it was printed at half scale. So that's why it's always important to put a graphical scale on your drawing. Above it, also important is the north arrow, because when you look at a building like here, you can't always assume that the top of the building is north. So that's called plan north, and plan north can be very different from true north. So over here, there's always an arrow, and that usually indicates true north. So when you talk to somebody about like which wall and everything it is, I always say plan north or plan west or plan east. But if you want to know the true orientation on the map on the globe, this is where the true north arrow is. So keep that in mind whenever you're talking about, east, west, north, south in a particular room, because some people might misinterpret that. You'll say the north wall, and instead of this wall, somebody will be like, okay, well, this is actual north wall. So I always say plan north so that they know that I'm talking about this wall. Before we get to the main floor plan, let's talk about this extra stuff up here. So generally we have a general drawing note, and this note applies to basically everything on this drawing. So you can use it to redirect people to legends, abbreviations. You can put like general blanket statements on this general note area up here. Then below that, you actually have what we call keynote or sheet notes. And these are very specific to the elements on the floor plan. So if you wanted to find out what this is, like this is keynote 16200, you come over here and you can find these little hexagons or circles, or sometimes they're little bubbles. They'll have the same corresponding number. So what this is trying to tell you is that this piece of equipment, which I believe is a panel board, yeah, it's a lighting appliance or panel or something. So that note goes to that panel board, and that's telling you electrical power for some reason. This is a demo project, so they never filled in all the notes, but this would be some note telling you how to install it, what type it is, what it's for, and these are very specific to the thing that it's tagged to. So these are called sheet notes or keynotes. All right, so then that sums up everything on the side of the drawing. Just one more note. Title block information tends to be on the right-hand side because, well, in the US, all of our drawings are typically bound on the left-hand side. So if you bind on the left-hand side, you don't want your information in the bound. So it's usually on the right-hand side, or sometimes the right bottom. Like it'll sometimes wrap around down here. So there's all different formats for a title block, but it generally has the same information. All right, so then in the middle, of course, you have your floor plan or your detail or your riser, or the main feature of the drawing. So this is something that you put on here to basically give the contractors and the bidders all the information that you want. So in this case, this is lighting design. So we're showing, light fixtures with some wiring. Looks like circuiting's not on here, but there are some switches. So all this information is in the drawing itself, and it changes drastically with what you want to show. So like a power floor plan will look very different from a lighting floor plan. So I don't know if this is set up, but let's look at, here's a riser diagram. So this drawing, as you see, title block is the same. It's missing some notes, but here you have a riser diagram. We can get into single lines and riser diagrams later, but essentially this shows you how the electrical equipment is arranged inside of a building from level to level. Riser diagrams have like the height as part of it, whereas a single line diagram does not. So let's go back here to the lighting plan. So that's about it. That's all the components of a drawing. Some drawings might have more depending on like if you have a panel schedule or something, or if you have details, then it's all a little slightly different, but that's the general gist of the title block, the notes, and everything. So hopefully that clears up any confusion you might have on what all is part of a drawing. And if you have any further questions, drop them in the comments, or if you have like specific examples, you can send them to me and the team over at Discord. and we'll talk there. All right, well, thank you so much for listening. If you want to dive into, say, like a Revit tutorial, I have one started here. You could try to watch that for now. I think I'm going to try to remake that, make it a little bit better for you. But in the meantime, check that out, and I'll see you guys around. Thanks. Bye.